beginning of the year seems like a great time to make fresh starts, plan new undertakings and start new series. I know that for me, in January, I'm far more likely to feel that it's achievable for me to binge read a series or knock something off one of my long-term goals than I am by the time we get to October and November and I'm frantically trying to catch up. My favourite genre by far is fantasy. And so in this video, I'm bringing you 10 of my absolute favourite fantasy series, which are entirely finished and that you could make a project of reading from start to finish this year. I thought we'd start with my all-time favourite book series by far, and it's definitely an ambitious one, but there are ways and means of doing it. This is the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. There are 41 books set in a completely fantastical world called the Discworld, a flat earth that travels through space, resting on the backs of 4 elephants perched on the shell of the giant space turtle Great Atuan. Within the Discworld we have different countries, cities, regions, and the Discworld stories take place across all of those. Although Discworld is 41 books, it's very easily divided into what get called sub-series. Within these, there's their own structure. You do get little cameos and little guest appearances, but they are relatively siloed off and they have a linear flow through their own sub-series, which means that you can pick and choose the ones that suit you. Now technically, if you want to start Discworld right from the start, from book 1, and work through it like an absolute beast, then the book that you want to pick to start is The Colour of Magic. The first 2 books in the series are actually, I would say, more like a duology. You have The Colour of Magic and you have The Light Fantastic. These books follow Rincewind, who is the world's most ineffectual, lazy, trying to get out of things wizard, and Twoflower, who is a tourist. These 2 books feel very much like fantasy of the 80s but with a humorous flow. There are references to things like Conan the Barbarian, daring rescues of glamorous, scantily clothed princesses. It is making fun of those 80s tropes and stereotypes, but it's not as original as the series becomes. I think it probably says a lot that every single Discworld fan I've ever spoken to, when giving advice for where to start in the Discworld, will tell you not to start with the first 2 books. They're great and I can see it being a really nice way to make sure that the series improves as you go along. They are the first 2 books of the Wizards series or the Rincewind series, depending on how you want to look at things. And personally, those aren't my favourite books. A better place to start might be Equal Rights. This is the first book in the Witches sub-series, a great trio of characters headed by Nanny Og, who is salt of the earth, a woman who likes a good drink and a sing-song, and Granny Weatherwax, who is my personal favourite Discworld character. She is bitchy and sharp and incredibly intelligent, but she also looks down on other people quite a lot. She's kind, but she can also be really, really cutting. She's a fantastic character and I utterly love her. Equal Rights is an interesting one because it is the first book in the Witches sub-series, but it also only features Granny. And I will say that the Granny Weatherwax we see in Equal Rights, I don't think is the same Granny Weatherwax we see in the rest of the Witches series. We follow a young girl called Escarina. She is the 7th son of a 7th son, except she's a girl. So she inherits this magical staff and these wizardly abilities, and it's up to Granny to take her from their little mountain town of Lancre down to Ankh-Morpork, the big city, to the Unseen University. There's a lot in this book about gender and equality, gender roles, and I think that Pratchett is playing about with a lot of things that he comes back to later, but this one just doesn't feel as good to me as the rest of the Witches books. Again, you could choose to skip this one and instead jump to the second Witches book, which is Weird Sisters. This is the one I would start the Witches with. Weird Sisters is a bit of a play on Shakespeare, on Macbeth. We play around with time travel and we see the Witches Coven the way I think of it. We have Nanny Og, Granny Weatherwax and Margaret Garlick, kind of hippie, wishy-washy youngest member of the trio that the other 2 very much bully and look down on. In this, the previous king of Lancre has been murdered and the new ruler is not a good guy. He's oppressing the people, he's destroying the earth, the land, and the witches take offence to this. They decide that they want to put the rightful heir to the throne back in charge, and they get involved with lots of magic to do that. If you don't fancy starting with the witches, then my third recommendation would be to start with the Guards series. Now, as much as I love the witches, I do think the Guards is a stronger series and it does have more books in it. You would be starting here with Guards. In this, we follow Sam Vimes, leader of the Night Watch in the city of Ankh-Morpork. The Night Watch they're not respected the way the Day Watch are. They're kind of seen as the bottom of the barrel, and Vimes is very much the bottomest of the barrel list. In this one, a previously thought to be extinct great dragon comes and terrorizes the city, and it ends up being the Night Watch that have to step up to the plate and defend it. This book is one of the ones where I really think you start to see Terry Pratchett's social commentary coming through. It's got the oft quoted Sam Vimes theory of social economics in it, where he mulls over the fact that a poor man will buy cheaper boots and in 10 years' time will have paid more for boots than a rich man and will still have wet feet. Overall, as a whole, I think it's one of the strongest, even though it has one of the simplest storylines. It sets you up with Vimes and the idea of the Night's Watch, a unit that grows and grows as the Guards books go on, getting more and more complicated, getting more involved in politics, getting more involved in some of the really, really best books in the series. Another long-running series you could start is, of course, the Percy Jackson books, but as a full universe, those are still going and still growing. Rick Riordan has put out dozens of books in the Percy Jackson expanded world, and there's even more if you consider the Rick Riordan Presents imprint as well. But personally, one of my favourite, again, what I would think of as a sub-series within a greater world, is the Magnus Chase trilogy. Apart from a couple of references here or there that you wouldn't really need to note, the Magnus Chase books stand almost completely on their own and separate from the greater world. You can read the 3 books in this and then decide not to go any further, not to expand out into the rest of the Percy Jackson world. So they're a really good place to get a taste for Rick Riordan's writing, and personally they are some of my favourite stories. We start with the Sword of Summer, go on to the Hammer of Thor, and end up in the Ship of the Dead. These books follow Magnus Chase, and similar to the Percy Jackson series, he finds out that he is the son of a god and gets involved then with the politics and the adventures of that pantheon. We get some really, really fun, unique takes on the gods from Norse mythology, along with a whole subset of monsters and other characters along the way. I always really enjoy Rick Riordan's takes on the mythology that he uses, and I think he does a really nice job of balancing the heart of the original myths with something that kids are going to enjoy and that adults can also get a lot of entertainment out of. Anywhere, the Kane Chronicles would also be a good place to start, but personally I recommend Magnus Chase. The final series that I would say is a really big, sprawling, ambitious one is the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. Depending on how you look at this series and how you categorise it, it either has 13 books or 15. I also think that there are various places you can kind of jettison out of the series and still have got a full complete tale. The first book is the really well-known Interview with the Vampire. This tells the story of Louis de Pontdulac, who became a vampire in the 1800s, and he's just telling a journalist the story of his life, how he met the vampire Lestat, was changed into a vampire by him, how their relationship went downhill, their adoption of the child vampire Claudia, and then the kind of tragedy of their family unspiraling as the story continues. From that one you go into the Vampire Lestat, which takes us further back and does Lestat's history from the moment he becomes a vampire up to when he meets Louis. And then we have Queen of the Damned, which is a really big multi-POV piece where we get lots of information on the very first vampires, how that came about, and our existing cast that we by then have of heroes goes up against Akasha, the queen of all the vampires. I would say that you could take those first 3 books as a trilogy on its own, leave the series there and be completely content. To be honest, they probably are the strongest books in the series, and they have a really nice narrative arc to them. The rest of the series flits about with either Lestat having adventures, very much being told Lestat no and saying Lestat yes. We have him as this kind of rebel brat prince among vampires. And then other books which are vampires we meet along the way telling their own story, their own history. So we have the Vampire Armand, we have Blood and Gold, which is Marius's story, we have Pandora, things like that. Some are better than others. I personally really love the Vampire Armand, but there are definitely books as you go along in this series where I would recommend looking up trigger warnings. The Vampire Chronicles get really dark intentionally. They're about vampires, they're about people with tragic pasts. There's a lot, especially to do with Armand, there's a lot about children suffering. And I would also say that Anne Rice's politics, her religious thoughts, they went up and down over the years, and some of the books have viewpoints that you might not agree with. The first 10 books in the series is another place where you could sort of nope out. That's where Anne Rice did. She wrote the first 10 books in the series and then decided she was done with it. She went away, she did other things, and then she came back and added the final 3 books, which are Prince Lestat and Atlantis, and Blood Communion. It's very purple prosy, it's very florid. She'll spend pages describing the wallpaper, the minutiae of a scene, and then just as you're ready to be done with it, something absolutely insane happens completely out of left field and drags you back in. She has a really self-indulgent writing style that truly fits, I think, that gothic setting that permeates these books. I personally really enjoy it, but I have to be in the right mood for it, and I definitely feel that they're kind of books that you have to sink into and invest time in. It is a fantastic series though, and it's definitely having a pop culture moment with the new TV series. So if you like vampires and want more of those actual gothic-y vampires, this could be the series for you. So jumping into some smaller series, some ones that are maybe more reasonable in a year, you could start off with The Tales of Verania by TJ Klune. TJ Klune is really popular at the moment, but The Tales of Verania came out long before he really kicked off in the trad pub world. This is not The House in the Cerulean Sea. You need to be really clear on that going in. This is a fantasy world setting. We follow a young wizard, Sam of Wilds. In the first book, he is rescuing Prince Justin from a dragon while also having a crush on Prince's guard, who also happens to be engaged to the prince. This is a queer normative world. It's also, I would describe it to most people as 13-year-old boy toilet humour. It's full of sex puns, it's full of deeply disturbing sexual acts by dragons and unicorns, and you just need to go with it. The humour you'll know if you like within a couple of chapters. I personally find it hilarious, and I can't really tell you why, because honestly that's not usually my type of humour, but I love it in this. It made me cry with laughter. And I think part of that might be that you can already see the fact that Klune knows how to write characters. He knows how to really get you emotionally invested in their stories. Those things that we will see him develop more in his more recent books, where their point is those really bittersweet emotional punches. Cerulean Sea, The Whispering Door, those type of things. The hints of that are here, the love for the characters, the ensemble casts, but the humour is completely different. These are very simultaneously very adult books and very childish books, but if you enjoy that, I do think they're a fantastic quartet, and there is a 4 short story bind up also available at the end. You'd start off with The Lightning Struck Heart, going on to A Destiny of Dragons, The Consumption of Magic, and A Wish Upon the Stars. Then we have the Captive Prince trilogy by C.S. Pacat. This is a fantasy novel in the sense that it is set in another world, but there's no actual magic in this world. It's about war and politics and royals going up against each other. We start with Captive Prince, go on to Prince's Gambit, and then finalise the trilogy with King's Rising. We follow Prince Daemon. His father has just been killed by his brother, and his brother has seized the throne. Daemon is the legitimate heir, but to get him out of the way, his brother has had him sold into slavery in one of their rival countries, Vir. He's been given to Prince Laurent of Vir, but Laurent doesn't know who his new sex slave Daemon is. It doesn't help that Daemon is actually the one that killed Laurent's older brother, so he's holding a lot of grudges against Daemon's country. There's a lot of things in this first book specifically that are very triggering, Obviously the whole concept is based around a form of sexual slavery, but I do really enjoy the series and it becomes more about the politics as we go forward. There's a lot of nuance to the characters and I think it's a really strong political fantasy series if you can get through the first book. Another trilogy, and this time a much more light-hearted one, this is the Last Binding trilogy by Freya Marske. It's set in Edwardian England where magic happens behind the scenes. In this book we follow Robin, who has accidentally been given charge of the liaison post between the magical and non-magical community. He meets up with his magical counterpart Edwin and together they try to uncover the mystery of what happened to Robin's predecessor and stumble into a large magical conspiracy. This particular one, A Marvellous Light, happens largely in an isolated manor house setting, which I really enjoy. It gives you those Agatha Christie type feels. Each book in the trilogy is serving a larger story, but each book focuses on a different couple and they have their own kind of sub-story going on within the larger world. So in the first book, this is an Achillean story. We are following Edwin and Robin. The next book is A Restless Truth. We follow Robin's sister Maud as she goes aboard ship and there's a sapphic relationship there. And we return to England for the last book, A Power Unbound. That's another Achillean story with characters that we meet along the way. I really enjoy this trilogy. It has a really unique magical world and it made Freya Marske a real auto-buy author for me. Another absolutely fantastic and completely finished trilogy is the Little Thieves trilogy by Margaret Owen. I reread the first book, Little Thieves, last year, read Painted Devils for the first time and then read Holy Terrors the day it came out. I've had such fun with this world, I really love it. The first book starts out as a retelling of the Goose Girl fairy tale, but from the point of view of the evil maid that steals Princess Giselle's identity. In this we follow Vanya as she takes over Giselle's life to step into the noble marriage alliance and works under cover of night as the Pendergast, a Robin Hood type of character. One day she steals from the wrong person and she ends up under the curse of a wild god. Unless she can do something truly selfless, she is gradually going to turn into the gemstones that she so values. Vanya is an amazing character. She is really truly one of the few morally grey protagonists that you see in YA fiction. I absolutely love her growth arc over the 3 books. Margaret Owen manages to convince you to completely and utterly root for her while never watering down or sanding away the rough aspects of her character. We also have Vanya meet Emmerich along the way. He is a young prefect that has been sent to investigate these robberies, and between the two of them we get some really nice demisexual and ace representation that is talked about without using the labels at multiple points through the book. We get lots of miscommunication, of course, but we also always have that make sense and the characters do talk through their problems and their thought processes with each other. It's really well done and I really enjoyed it. We also get some background queer characters and lots of clever takes on German folklore and other fairy tale aspects that work really well when blended in with the Goose Girl. Another trilogy you could read is Winternight by Catherine Arden. This one starts with The Bear and the Nightingale, goes on to The Girl in the Tower, and finishes up with The Winter of the Witch. This Russian folklore inspired trilogy would be absolutely perfect for this time of year with its really cold weather setting. We follow Vasilia. She has a real connection to the folkloric aspects, the spirits around her house, around the world in this time. But when her father brings home a new stepmother and the stepmother brings with her a really religious, devout priest, we see the conflict between these folkloric type of creatures, this old world religion, and the new authoritative Christianity that's coming in. The first book, I will admit, is very slow. We spend a lot of time with Vasilia growing up, but the books do really kick off in terms of pacing in the second and third one, as it all barrels towards a really great scene at the end, which is a historical event Catherine Arden says she built the entire trilogy around getting to. It's a fantastic series. There's loads of folklore and mythology worked into it, lots of medieval Russian events, and the world building in this is so solid. You can tell that Arden really knows her history, and all the magic that happens around that always feels incredibly grounded. The writing is beautiful, it is quite lyrical and quite descriptive, so if you are looking for something punchy, this might not be for you, but if you want something beautiful and immersive, this could be the one. Then we have the Circle of Magic books by Tamora Pierce. Tamora Pierce for me is the absolute classic upper middle grade YA fantasy writer. She was the author that pulled me into the fantasy genre, and I still adore her books to this day. She has multiple quartet series that exist within mostly 2 different worlds, one of which is largely knights and kings and that sort of fantasy, and then the Emelan books, which we're going to talk about. There is a couple of sequel quartets, but the first one is the Circle of Magic. The American books, I think rather boringly, name these as like Sandry's book, Triss's book, Daja's book and Briar's book. But here in the UK we have The Magic in the Weaving, The Power in the Storm, The Fire in the Forging and The Healing in the Vine. These books are set at Winding Circle Temple, which is a school for mages, but the magecraft is very different from anything I've ever seen in any other books. It's very based in real world practical crafts. For instance, our main character in the first book is Sandry. She has the power to spin magic into threads and into weaving and into fabric and any kind of needlecraft. Then we have Briar, whose magic is in healing, in plants, in gardening. Triss, who I will admit is the most kind of out there one, her magic comes from the weather. And then Daja, who is a metalsmith, her magic comes through fire, forging and through all sorts of blacksmithing. The 4 children meet in the first book and they become a really solid found family. I love the adventures they go on. These are such beautiful character driven stories. They are really, in my opinion, the peak of that upper middle grade, lower YA fantasy novel. And then my final series for you is actually technically a duology, and I don't know, do we count duologies as series? But it's a duology that also has a prequel novel which was originally a standalone, so you know, it's up to you where you come in. That first book that you can read entirely on its own is called Thorn, and it's actually another Goose Girl retelling. But you don't have to read that to read this duology. This is the Dauntless Path duology by Intisar Kanani. It starts with The Theft of Sunlight and goes on to A Darkness at the Door. There are some spin-off novellas that you can read, some short stories, but these 2 books do stand completely on their own. In this book series we have children mysteriously going missing, and when our protagonist Ray joins her cousin at the royal court, she becomes involved in the investigation. There's not a lot you can say about this book without really giving loads of it away, but I highly recommend it. There's lots of action, adventure, there's lots of fantastical politicking, and this first book has a cliffhanger ending that I really was not expecting, and the stakes only rose in the second one. We also get some really nice representation in here. Ray has a club foot, and that actually is brought up repeatedly in the way that people treat her and in what she's able to do. It really feels like really strong disability representation. This is a really emotional, conspiracy-packed, magical duology that I highly recommend. If you're looking for something that is YA but has a really darker tone to it, then this is perfect for you. So there you have my top 10 completed fantasy series. I really hope that you find something here that you might want to try. Let me know if you do, either if you've read any of these or if you are now interested in any of them. Also, let me know what your favourite completed fantasy novel series is, because I might want to pick that up this year. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more of these, then please do like it and subscribe to the channel. If you want to leave a comment because you've got this far but don't really have anything in particular you want to say, then leave me a sunshine emoji for The Theft of Sunlight. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.